Hello, everybody, and happy Friday. We are going to be talking today about Sappho. We are going a little bit further ahead in time before we get to Oedipus, but this kind of seems like the best day for us to be able to kind of have this opportunity to go over Sappho, but definitely keep her in mind whenever we do get into Greek Athenian drama, and also when we go to the Roman Aeneid as well, because we are going to do some comparing and contrasting with her and some of the male writers that were around the same time she was. Sappho is going to be one of the few actual poets, especially female poets, that we have actually records of their work of from this ancient time. So we're going to go over her life and what little we do know about her, kind of talk about her cultural significance, and then also we're going to look at some of her poems. And I have a link in the Blackboard folder for today with some more of her works that you can actually look at as well. So you can see here, she was born on the Greek Isle of Lesbos around 630 BCE. So this is quite some time after the work we have just been encountering. She is the only ancient Greek female author whose works survive in more than just fragments. That we do have little bits and pieces from other female authors, but we actually have some of her whole poetry. She's also known as the 10th Muse. She was very much influential, not only at the time she was writing, but also writers down the road. Scholars at the Great Library of Alexandria actually arranged her poetry, which at the time consisted of more than 1,000 lines. If you know anything about history, you do know that unfortunately, the library at Alexandria was destroyed, and we lost a lot of great works whenever that happened. Now we only have one to two complete poems and then some quotations. Um, from her, little bits and pieces, and also some quotations from ancient writers who were writing about her. And we have access to that on Blackboard as well on the same document where I actually included her poetry for you guys. One thing I want us to think about when it comes to Sappho is in your textbook, it actually claims that Sappho's poems give us the most vivid evocation of the joys and sorrows of desire in all of Greek literature. So, after we have explored some of Sappho and also read Oedipus in this next coming up week, just consider that as we go along. So, what do we know about her? We don't know a whole lot. I mentioned earlier when she was born, about where. This is off the coast of Asia Minor. So, this is going to be a Greek island where she is born. Poems suggest she might have had a spouse and a daughter. So, she does write about being a bride and about marriage. She composed lyric poetry. So, this poetry was not meant to just be read off of a tablet or off of a scroll, but rather to be performed by a chorus. And I have a little video, not a video, sorry. We have a little picture here of a Greek chorus in Nashville. This is obviously a lot more contemporary, but just to kind of give you an idea of what it may have looked like. And a chorus would just be a group of dancing and singing women and girls, accompanied by musical instruments. So they would perform these texts. So, how did her work survive? One of the ways that we know about her is from other ancient writers who were maybe more popular, or we have more of their work that lasted, and also from the trash bins in Egypt. Scraps of papyrus were found in excavations of Egypt. And they also found some of her works on broken clay jars where her works had been painted. Uh, One thing to consider when reading her poetry is that like when we talked about Gilgamesh and how there were bits of tablet missing and we didn't perhaps have the entire picture or the entire story, the same thing goes for her works. Translators have tried to fill in the gaps, um, but we can't know exactly what those gaps could have been. And she actually has some stuff that's fairly been recently discovered. Her latest poems, Brothers in Cyprus, was only made public in 2014 from a new papyrus discovery. These things kind of happen all the time when it comes to literature, both ancient and maybe more contemporary. You have people that are discovering new things either by looking in random library piles, or in this case, from archaeologists discovering papyrus, again, from some more Egyptian trash. She actually has a lot of historical and cultural significance, even though we do not know a lot about her. Um, in the 1800s, her poems actually inspired the coinage of the contemporary term lesbian, so coming from the Isle of Lesbos. This is because some of her works do reference things that seem romantic towards women. However, as you can see in this, the note that I have in the slides, this was not a term that would have been used back then. And we do know she potentially had a spouse and a daughter. We do not know her relationships that she actually had. This was just something that people in the 1800s kind of connected with her work. And if you've ever heard the word sapphic, which usually refers to attraction or relationships between women, that also comes from her name. And again, despite this coined term, this was not something, a term that would have been used during her times, and we can't really label her in contemporary terms. And this was a quote from an older edition of the book, but I really enjoyed this. It says Sappho's poems evoke a world in which girls lived in an intense communal life of their own, enjoying activities and festivals in which only women took part, in which they fully engaged with one another. Because her work is female centric, is maybe why people of the 19th century um, refer to her in specific ways. This is a little bit of comparison between her and Homer. We are unfortunately not reading Homer in this class because our big epic that we're reading next is the Aeneid. But I still wanted to kind of show how she covers the Trojan War. And this is something that will be referenced in the Aeneid. So we can still make some comparisons when we get to that text. And I see, I do have a little typo here, so I do apologize. But whereas she focused on the feminine, he, of course, would focus on the masculine. Her thoughts on the Trojan War had more to do with feelings, whereas Homer emphasized war and action. She would write more to or about Aphrodite, the goddess of love, whereas Homer would talk about Zeus, the the king of the gods, essentially. Helen of Troy, who is looked at as the catalyst for this war. She looks at her in a more favorable light, um, as being kind of a victim of circumstance, of love, rather than intentionally causing this strife that happens. Whereas Homer is going to focus on Achilles and his male relationships. And then she emphasizes beauty and personal choices, whereas Homer is going to instead look at fate and the intervention of the gods. Um, this is a poem about Troy that she actually wrote. This says, some say an army of horsemen, others a host of infantry, others a fleet of ships is the most beautiful thing on black earth. But I say it's whatever you love. It's perfectly easy to make this clear to everyone. For she who surpassed all in beauty, Helen, left behind her most noble husband, and went sailing off to Troy, giving not thought at all to her child or dear parents, but led her astray. For lightly reminded me now of Anacortia, who is not here. I would rather see her lovely walk and her bright sparkling face than the chariots of the Lydians, or infantry and armies, not possible to happen, to pray, to share, unexpected. And these lines are going to be where things are missing from the actual words of her poem. So, as you can see here, she is focusing not on the battle or the consequences, but the feelings and emotions that actually motivate Helen of Troy. This is a love poem. It's a little kind of dark, you'll see after we read it. Um, but this is also known as Sappho's Confession. I honestly wish I were dead. Weeping, she left me with many tears and said this: "Oh, this has turned out so badly for us, Sappho. Truly, I leave you against my will." And I answered her, "Be happy and go. And remember, for me, you know how much we loved you. But if not, I want to remind you and the good times we had. For many crowns of violets and roses you put on by my side, and many woven garlands made from flowers around your soft throat, and with much perfume costly, fit for a queen, you anointed yourself, and on a soft bed of delicate you loose your desire, and not any, nor any holy place, nor from which we were absent, no grove, no dance, no sound." This would be one of those poems where people associate those same sex feelings for Sappho. Some scholars have argued that this is about a student of hers that is leaving and that this love is more maternal. It really just depends on the reader and their interpretation. All right, so what I'm going to be asking you guys to do, I read you guys a little snippet. We've gotten a little bit of experience with Sappho, but click on the link that we actually have on Blackboard, and you guys are going to be going through her poems. She's got little bits and fragments and some long, and then again those two longer ones that we have. And just talk to me about um, why do you think her poetry has lasted so long? Is still studied today? Should it be? Why or why not? If you think it shouldn't be, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But give good, logical, literary reasons. Did you have a favorite poems from the readings? And if so, which one was your favorite? And I also want to note that with that collection of poems that I have linked here for you guys, we also have, along with this poem, we have a bit of stuff where she has been referenced by other writers at the time. So whenever you have finished checking out her poems and her fragments, also look at what other writers, either at the time or further on down the road, thought about her. She's even mentioned a little bit here in the Odyssey. So some pretty cool stuff to check out. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, please just let me know, and I will see you guys on Monday.